Okay, lecture 5 now. So we're almost halfway through the class. In this lecture, we're going to be talking about breaks, so page breaks, section breaks, line breaks, and just how that kind of impacts your wider layout. So that's our second learning objective for this module, using spacing, page breaks, and section breaks to control document flow. So some of these you're probably more familiar with than others. I think line breaks, everybody knows. Page breaks has fans and detractors. Section breaks are probably a little bit less familiar to you, but we're going to go over all three of them. So we're going to start out with the line break versus the page break. So they both have their places, right? Like you're going to use both of them 100%. The line break is generally better like when you need the break immediately. So right after you need to just go to the next line in your page. It can be for formatting or just to go to the next section in your piece of writing. So it just goes right to the next line. And so you could, if you have, maybe you're writing a multi-chapter paper. So we'll use the dissertation example. So if your dissertation has 5 chapters, you're not going to have chapter 2 start on the same page as chapter 1 ends, right? So you'd want to, maybe you use half your page and you want to go on to the next page to start new. So chapter 2 starts kind of at the beginning, like in a traditional book. When you're reading that, the next chapter always starts on its own page. And so you could just hit enter a lot. And I'm sure that's what a lot of you do naturally. But then say you go back to chapter 1 and you add something else in there. Now you're going to have a bunch of extra spaces, a bunch of extra line breaks on the beginning of chapter 2's page. And so to avoid that and avoid having to go back through and again manually delete all of those lines, you can use a page break. And so that will be put in there, that will automatically move to the next page. And so if you add to chapter 1 and it bumps it down a little bit, or most to the next page, it's just going to start new, a fresh page always for chapter 2. So it's a little bit cleaner when you're thinking about kind of the presentation of the document. It helps you keep the structure better without you having to go back through and check to make sure everything is aligned right. A place that I use these breaks often is in my resume. And so I'm constantly adding things to my resume, right? And so sections get moved around, sections are longer or shorter. And so these breaks help to keep it a little bit more organized when somebody's reading it. There's lots of other places where it's going to be really useful. And so this is how you would get to each of those in Word and Google Docs. So I just took screenshots from my own. With Word, you go up to insert and then go down to break, and then you see all the different types of breaks there. We're going to talk about section breaks in a minute. So if you're not already familiar with that, you will be soon. And so page breaks, the first one in both of these, you can see on Google Docs, it's the same: insert, break, and page breaks. The breaks, like other things, you can do a little bit more with them in Word than you can in Google Docs, but Google Docs is pretty good with breaks in general for what most people would ever need. So then section breaks. And so these are something where you need to kind of start over fresh, essentially. And so it's going to be where you're making kind of bigger formatting changes. So it can be like we have here: margins, orientation, headers, or footers. Say you have a long document, but you have a table that takes up more space and you can't present it in the kind of portrait setup. So you need to go landscape. You can do a section break and that will tweak it, make it show properly. And then you can do another section break and go back into your portrait. I think probably the break that people see most often is when you're working with a header or a footer and there's that little box that says different first page. That's, you want no page number on the first page, but you want it to show up on the second. There's lots of different reasons for it. I have, again, a screenshot of an example. So this is in one of my syllabi for a class. And so I have the actual assignment, but then I have a rubric, and my rubrics are bigger, more, detailed tables. And so that just wouldn't fit in a portrait setup, but I use a section break, I put it into landscape, I have my rubric, and then I go back into portrait for the next assignment and the next rubric. With this too, you can also change the margins. So sometimes it can create issues, but sometimes it can be useful where, again, like for this example, maybe for the traditional text and the portrait for the assignment detail, I can have 1 inch margins, but then because my rubric table is so big, I need to go down to 1/2 inch margins for that. And so doing the section break also lets you do that without kind of causing any issues. So a lot of times people do come into issues where they'll have a section break, or sometimes, I mean, even when you just hit random keys, in my experience at least, breaks will sometimes appear in my document without me intending to have them there. So if you come into issues such as missing page numbers, headings being kind of wonky, a lot of times it could be because you have a section break in there that you weren't really aware of. So it's another one where you get used to using them intentionally, then you would know when that is causing your problems and you kind of can work backward from it. So you can see here as well that example of the different first page and how it kind of looks different in each of these. And again, you can see the Word option just has significantly more, right? There's much more that you can work with there, much more formatting you can do. Whereas Docs basically has the essentials, what you need to survive, basically, to be working with these headings and the section breaks within them. So as this is mostly just to note that different first page or same as previous option there. So when you're formatting a document, if something's not where it's supposed to be or you've lost it, check these sorts of things to see if that might be what the issue is. So that was a quick one, but it's very important. So breaks are simple, but they really can make your life a lot easier. So the things that you should be taking away from this are that a line break is just a new line, it's enter. Page break goes you to a new page. It's control or command enter, just to kind of start over fresh. And then a section break is when you want to be able to edit the presentation or the formatting of that piece. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Again, in your activity for this module, you're going to be able to apply some of this. But really, I would say just kind of start playing around with it again in Word and in Docs. Get used to the keyboard shortcuts and see when it might be useful in the documents that you're creating.